Excellent. Welcome everyone to, I believe it's our fifth leadership development conversation. I'm Courtney Cowart, and I'm here with SIMS board chair, Hillary Greer, and our colleague, Jim Goodman, and Brian Sellers-Peterson, our tech support, Mike Longworth, and our guests today, Robert and Ritchie Tubal. So welcome to them and welcome to all of you. Just want to say a word about the Society for the Increase of the Ministry, which is an organization that was founded in 1857, if you can believe it, and might be described as the Episcopal Church's first leadership development organization. For 162 years, we've been identifying leaders of the church, helping people with their seminary education, with scholarships, and also been really engaged in questions around what is a thorough education for each generation in the church in our time. So we're lifting up, we've got a lot of alumni, and we've been lifting up a lot of really interesting, innovative ministry leaders to learn from one another. And today we're very glad to welcome Robert and Ritchie, who are partners in life and partners in ministry, and old friends of mine from our days back at General Seminary on Chelsea Square in New York. So it's really good to see you and to have you here. We are very interested to hear about your ministry in Minneapolis, both the All Saints Indian Mission and the First Nations Kitchen. I'm going to leave it to them to tell us more about the context and the inspiration and focus for this ministry. But I think you're just going to be fascinated by it, and I'm just going to now kick it off to Hillary to take it from here.
Sure. Well, welcome everyone. It's great to be together again. As in past webinars, we'll start with an opening reflection with which Ritchie will share with us a prayer. And then we'll have a time for some webinar dialogue with Robert and Ritchie Tubal, sort of learning about their ministry. And after about a half an hour of that conversation, we'll open it for your questions and thoughts and experiences. So I'd like to just start off by asking Ritchie to lead us in prayer.
Thank you. Creator, we give you thanks for all you are and all you bring to us, for our visit within your creation. In Jesus, you place the gospel in the center of this sacred circle through which all of creation is related. You show us the way to live a generous and compassionate life. Give us your strength to live together with respect and commitment as we grow in your spirit. For you are God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So could you get us started by telling us a bit about the All Saints Indian Mission and First Nations Kitchen, and the story of sort of how that started and has developed over the years?
Sure. I'll share a little bit, and Ritchie could fill in the blanks, parts I couldn't cover. So first off, just want to say we're glad and honored to be part of this program this afternoon. I was a recipient from SIMS back in I was in seminary at General. Now it's been years ago, 20 some years ago now. So I feel incredibly old right now. So with the kitchen, so I'm Robert. My official title is Reverend Canon, and I am the missioner for the Department of Indian Work, Multicultural Ministries for the Episcopal Church in Minnesota. I'm also the priest in charge of All Saints Indian Mission, and I am one of the founders of First Nations Kitchen. I am the chief fundraiser, sometimes cook, and head custodian. That's what I tell people. So with that said, you know, we were serving in the Diocese of Los Angeles before we came here to Minnesota. And about 14 years ago, we accepted the call to come here to do the work. One of the things that really hooked me in, what I felt was a real call, was when I was sitting around the table at All Saints, which was founded back in the 70s. It was founded as a house church, and then it moved around.
Circle to which all of creation is related. You show.
So it started out as a house church and then moved around the neighborhood, and then back in the mid 80s, the Episcopal Church Minnesota purchased the current worship house that we are now in from the Nazarenes. And that building was first built by the Swedish Baptists back in the 1920s. And so we've been the current occupants of the building since 86. And it was under the leadership of one of our priests, now deceased, Phil Allen, who was a really big name in the Episcopal Church and indigenous ministries. So he built up the congregation to the point where the next person to take over was Mother Melanie Spears, who took it to the next level, and she had this vision of starting a food ministry, or what she said, a soup kitchen. And so by about 1998, 99, they got some grants to begin renovating the buildings. They did a top to bottom renovation with the intent of starting this ministry. By 2000, she had retired for medical reasons, and so for the next 6-7 years, the program had a lot of starts and stops for various reasons. So by the time I got there to sit at the table and to listen to, you know, the vision of the food ministry, that's what hooked me in. I felt it was a real call. As I looked at, you know, my life and the work I've done, and, you know, the times I've spent volunteering in various food ministry programs, whether that was in the places we lived in LA, New York City, or Washington, DC, and even just growing up on the Pine Ridge Reservation and in Rapid City, South Dakota, you know, seeing how food is used, seeing how food is consumed in different contexts, whether it's my own as a Lakota, you know, where everybody's fed, everybody gets fed, and everybody has enough food to take home with them to carry them through the day, to volunteering at various soup kitchens, especially the one in LA with the Catholic workers, you know, and how they do their work, and just being inspired and gathering these ideas as I went along. Then all of a sudden I'm at this table, and this is what they want to do. So my initial idea was to start this program up, because I told them at the table, I says, your biggest hurdle is behind them. You got the kitchen. They had this really nice industrial grade kitchen that just really wasn't being utilized. And plus, you know, they only had a small membership group that would not be able to maintain such a program, because I knew what it would take to get it rolling. So for the next 2 years, after accepting the call, we spent the next 2 years just talking about it, putting together a program around it, raising the funds, doing all this good stuff. And then on All Saints Sunday in 2008, we had our first meal, and we serve every Sunday. And so the initial focus for me was that we would serve organic indigenous food. Indigenous being that we wouldn't serve cow, pig, chicken, to the community. We would just serve indigenous, which would be buffalo, walleye, venison, turkey, things that are sourced that our ancestors had eaten, our ancestral diet, basically. And then, of course, organic is whatever we could source. And we've tried to stick to those principles. And gathering a group of people around the table to plan, I think that's where a lot of the other ideas came in with serving meals that instead of the way I'd envision it would be like your regular soup kitchen where people just stand in line and you serve as many as you can. Someone said, how about if we just sit down and we serve them? And we thought that was, for me, that was like a great idea. It's like, wow, I didn't even think of that. It's so simple to be able just to break bread and to sit down and visit. I always say that in our program, at least for me anyway, it's what's most important is that community is being built, that we break bread together, we share our stories, we listen to one another, whether that individuals from the burbs or somebody who's just off the street who's wanting to eat, that's what it's all about. I think in the end is that we're able to sit and to talk and to visit and to break bread. And, we had never missed a Sunday until COVID. We decided back in mid-March to close our doors because we had an individual that was tested positive, but didn't get a test, but was tested over the phone with their doctor. So, we thought about it. We just didn't want to endanger the people we serve. A lot of the folks that come into our space are, living on the margins or vulnerable or have various medical issues. And so we just didn't want to chance it. So we said, we'll close our doors and we'll wait till June 7th to open up again. Well, in the meantime, had a deep cleaning of our facilities, did everything we're supposed to do. And then before June 7th, everything happened here around the protests. And it was just timing, and so we did open on the 7th. And so we're not cooking any meals right now, but what we are doing is giving out fresh produce to the community. And kind of where we're at today. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I know there's a lot more detail that Ritchie hopefully could cover. And so I'll turn it over to her.
And Ritchie, if you could tell us particularly about some of the partnerships, which
Sure.
you're also brilliant at creating.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to. I would say that I was at the table when we were, I heard all of Bob's sermons about, getting the feeding program together over those 2 years. And then we were really sitting down as a small congregation to talk about it. And, you can talk about something forever. And then finally Bob was like, oh, we're going to start on All Saints. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh. But we did. And that's how we sort of got to that next level of figuring things out. You can do lots of advanced planning, but when you have your feet on the ground or your sandals on the ground, that's where you really can see what you need to do. And so initially, I came to it sort of as a mom and a spouse partner who was forming relationships in the community just by taking the kids to school. That's how I found out about Co-op Partners Warehouse, that they would distribute organic, or that you could pick up organic food that was going to be basically trashed if you didn't, and then a local bakery that you could pick up bread. and just making relationships with people in this sort of the natural day-to-day way. And then also being employed as an art therapist in the Native community within a mile of our house put me in touch with the direct community that we live in, that we serve in, that we church in, all of that. So our partnerships initially, we started out with having, in an easy way, starting out with like letters that went out to the metro area Episcopal churches. So we started in some sense, in terms of volunteers in our own backyard, and inviting churches to come on board in the capacity of volunteering, as well as helping us with raising some of the funds to support. And so that then has grown to the inclusion of other denominations and schools, nonprofits, restaurant, Gandhi Mahal restaurant, Cub Scouts, Eagle Scouts, youth groups from up north and South Dakota, music, the Hook and Ladder music place, all simultaneous to sharing our space and trading relationships with people that we developed relationships with, like Pie and Mighty, which is a small business run by Rachel Swan and Karen Ratchett, who needed a commercial kitchen to work in, to start a new business, to start a business. And also a theater group that in the winter had no home and needed a place to rehearse and would use our space. And we'd get comped tickets. You know, we would have these relationships and partnerships that kind of started slowly and then blossomed over time. Each year is a little bit different. We were doing more work right now with our Episcopal churches and our other churches that work with us to form kind of more formalized covenants, you know, agreement, after doing this for almost 12 years, seeing that it's a great way to have deeper conversation about what works and what doesn't work and what needs to change, and also helping folks to know what's good for us. Like we'd sort of like to know in advance if there's going to be a big change. Right now, we have 15 metro area or 14 metro area Episcopal churches that partner with us in varying capacities, and one Episcopal church in California that participates by sending us fresh or dried beans. We have 4 other churches in the area, Lutheran and United Church of Christ, that also serve with us. And we have some school organizations, the Breck School, which is a K through 12, the AFS students, the Native American Law Students Association at Hamlin Mitchell, and the Dartmouth alums of the area. And I guess I could go on in detail about partners, but I think basically what I would say about that is these are thoughtfully nurtured, and I think what is amazing is to think about the amount of time that needs to be given them, and to work on communication, to It does take time. These things take time and a lot of coffees and meals. And actually, that's the part that I love. And so, what's fortunate at our table of our crew is that it's a wide range of, it's a small, mighty crew, but it's a wide range of folks. If anyone has read that wonderful children's story about Frederick the Mouse, you know, where there's a mouse that during the winter is not, or during the fall is not squirreling things away, putting things away to save, but is looking at colors and beauty and basically is the dreamer. We've got, I'd say Bob is Frederick, you know, comes up with the big, amazing ideas and sustains us with the stories during the winter. And then we have different people at our table and in our partnerships who help with the other pieces that have to happen. And so it's a microcosm of what is happening on a partner level.
Great, thank you. One of the things that's so striking about the work that you do too is the intersection that you point to between environmental justice, you know, cultural identity, racism, public health, you know, and the incidence of diabetes and, you know, other diseases among people who don't have good access to food and healthcare, and that the food system is really at the center of this, you know, for you. And it's very empowering for me to see the way that you identify food as a source of agency. So can you talk a little bit about the power dynamics that you see within the food system and how community-based agriculture and these kind of agricultural ministries can really, you know, take action and do something constructive around those intersecting injustices?
Yeah, you know, when I was in serving in LA, you know, one of the things, you know, I would notice there is that there's just a super abundance of food, fresh produce that is, you know, growing on trees, or you just pick an orange off someone's orange tree sometimes, you know, it depends. But then, you know, then coming here to what's, you know, one would say is like, you know, one of America's bread baskets, where it's just farms all over the place as far as you could see sometimes. But then when you look at what's being grown, you know, it's either soybeans or corn that you can't really consume off the cob. You know, it's corn that's soon to be processed into like ethanol or high fructose corn syrup or stuff like that. So, you know, there's just hundreds and thousands of acres of this stuff, you know, and then you come into the city, then you in the place where we live and where our church is at, you know, you see that people, you know, don't have really good access to good food, canned goods, you know, that's probably what happens to a lot of the stuff too, you know, gets canned and then, you know, it's not the healthiest. I mean, I'll eat canned foods now and again, but then, you know, there's just that access, you know, and this shouldn't have to be. It shouldn't have to be, not in this country. Everybody should have access to good food, good, healthy food. It's you know, I'm at a loss of words when I start talking about this because it doesn't make sense up here when I look around. So with that said, you know, to look at what we do and how we try to help people that don't have access. I mean, yeah, okay, we have Seward Co-op, which is not far, maybe a couple miles from where we live. Seward Co-op's, you know, the place to go if you want some really good produce, organic, good stuff. You know, it's typical co-op. But not everybody could go there, not everybody could afford it. Then we had we did have Cubs, but that got torched during the protests. That was a big market. And then one Aldi's got torched and the other one opened up. It's a small one. And then there's a independently owned grocery down the road on Lake, and that's still in operation. But there again, it's your typical little market that only has a certain amount of selection that one can do. And they're a little more, as they would say in Minnesota, spendy. And so the access, it's just a shame. So we try to at least what we do provide, are foods that most people, when they go in the market, probably wouldn't purchase because of the expense. Even like buffalo. Buffalo's expensive, and so what I look at is, when we do the indigenous part, that's for where I'm from, those kind of foods are now only used in ceremony. Most people cannot afford to consume that kind of food daily.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, man, that's not right.
Can you talk a bit, Robert, about why it's so essential to serve indigenous foods and the role that plays in kind of reclaiming cultural identity and teaching the connection?
Yeah, our ancestral diet was healthy. We didn't have diabetes, we didn't have high blood pressure, we didn't have obesity. The food is so like bison. That's what we're supposed to be calling. We're not supposed to be using buffalo, so we're saying bison. It's high in protein, low in carbohydrates. It's a healthy meat. It's a wild, basically, and that's. Now, if we were able to just stick to our ancestral diet, our health would be a lot better, and then we wouldn't be compromised during this COVID. A lot of my relatives are trying to lay low, on the reservations. Just a case in point, look what's going on down in Navajo land and what they're experiencing with COVID. It's devastating. And that's what we said at the beginning, when the COVID started, it's just like, once it hits the reservations, it's going to be devastating. And we're seeing it unfold. And here in the cities, it's same thing, it's the folks here, to have access to their ancestral diet is a little more challenging. And so if we could provide at least one good meal a week that people could look forward to, that's a good thing. And, hopefully we could do more of these. I keep talking like we'd like to do more days where we'd serve food, but then I get the look like, oh my God, really? You want to try this, So it's, I keep trying to sell it,
It'll happen.
It'll happen. I mean, we are starting First Nations Kitchen North, got to add here up on the Leech Lake and White Earth reservations. Going to be a similar type of model, but a little different in terms of how the food is prepared and the volunteer-based things like that.
And as we think about the inherent justice issues within food, I know you'd both had some comments about the use of terms, like food desert and even food justice or food apartheid. Can you talk just about that and your view of, I think what you've described, Robert, in your neighborhood in Minneapolis, many would term a food desert. And what's your take on that? And what do you think, are productive ways of naming and talking about these justice issues?
Yeah, that's always the hard thing, is to try to change language and how we use the words. I mean, just like with the use of the word soup kitchen, it took me a long time to sort of step away from that. use another term, or just simple, food justice. And but we, like, the folks who show up, we call them our guests, instead of our clients, or or whatever. We say these are our guests, and that in itself just implies that they're here. We welcome them. We eat together, and we visit. We listen to one another's stories, and that's really important. Is really making relations. I mean, from where I'm from, that's a big part of who we are, is how we make our relations with one another. It's mitaku yashi, we're all related. That's a simple concept. And it's, I think, centers around food. It centers around the circle. We break bread together. Now, the thing with, the food desert, that's a hard, it's really hard to get out of that language, and maybe use the word. I think the current one is food apartheid. It's to, I mean, just like to when I use the word food desert, we're currently living in one. After the riots, and the burning of the big supermarkets. But for me, I have a nice car I could jump into and drive the extra miles to go to the big supermarket or the Costco and stock up, and so I'm good. But what about some of my parishioners, or some of my guests, who don't have a car they can hop into and drive to the big Costco down, which is about 10 miles away. Um, it's limiting a lot of people.
I also liked, Ritchie, you were kind of shifting the lens and saying, let's look at our assets. Let's look, just using the terminology food desert is coming from a place of scarcity or lack. Could you say a little more about just that philosophy that's kind of asset-based way of thinking about building ministry?
Yeah, and I gotta say that I'm learning every single day. This stuff is I'm changing all the time, but just to be focused on scarcity is a very limiting prospect. And I think that when we are looking at the assets, and when there's actual organizing that's happening in the community, and that it involves the people who are also most affected by the apartheid, the food apartheid, then we have broadened the possible solutions or actions. And it's the same in forming the partnerships and in relationships, bringing an idea of, instead of, we need somebody's contributions, we need a check. It's more, let's sit together and have conversations and get to know each other. What are our stories, and what might come? What sort of creative ideas might come forward? It was pointed out to me that we don't. I don't know where the term food desert started. We can all Google that. But unlikely that it was brought forward by a person who's affected. It's quite likely that that's a more mainstream sort of term that's happened. And then that it doesn't accurately reflect exactly what's going on. What is there? What are the capacities? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to continue this dialogue and invite the questions and comments of everyone who's attending. And we'll start with Ron Spann, who commented that in the 19th century, the British Raj grew opium on the Indian countryside to sell to China, causing widespread poverty impacting India into the 20th century, feeding revolutionary turmoil in China. And we wonder about food deserts. The strategy and its roots are old.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron.
That just speaks to history of exploitations, redlining, all of the things that happen. We're ourselves kind of more focused on urban setting because that's where we live and we serve today. But we have to remember the rural settings as well.
Yeah. Well, and the tremendous history too of people from rural areas who historically were farmers, you know, and were the agricultural workers and farmers of this country, now moving into urban centers, and many descendants now not knowing how to grow food. And as Robert pointed to, suffering from so many diseases that weren't a problem when people had access to healthy food.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That is one thing that when we have our volunteers come in and we're in a circle where we're orienting people to our program and how they will work in the evening or the afternoon, that is a primary point for us.
Yeah. So we invite your questions and your comments in the Q&A box or else in the chat box. Franca Floro is asking, is there a plan or current aspect that allows for opportunities for jobs or economic development in your model?
Yeah, Ritchie mentioned the Pie and Mighty, which was a upstart small business. And the woman who started it, I used to work with. She was on staff at the Episcopal office, and anyway, so she needed a kitchen to start her business out of, and so she approached us, and then for the next few years, she was baking these wonderful, great pies out of our kitchen, and it was great because sometimes she would let us have one, and other times she would participate in our fundraisers and make just a bunch of pies, and we include that in some of what we were doing with our fundraising. But she eventually went into the next level, bought a place not far from one block from on Chicago and 38th, where George Floyd was murdered by the MPD, and that's where she's operating now. She's, it was hard because once she opened her doors, COVID hit. But she's managed to keep it together, and she's baking pies and doing well. Other things, we've done is we hire local guys, native guys who help with our security. We pay them a little something, help them out. They always appreciate that. Things like that. We've had a part-time paid employee for a while there, and right now we have a fellow from Circle of the Beloved young adult community. We're going to be getting another fellow in August, so that's a good thing. And a goal of ours is to really try to expand into the economy and try to create more jobs that way. But it takes a lot more monies to do that. So I'm currently contemplating of going that next step to a nonprofit status. Whether that's doable or not, I turn it over all the time and ask myself if that's the next right step.
Mm. You know, it reminds me of when I was working in New Orleans after Katrina, and Catholic Charities had a restaurant called Cafe Reconcile.
Mm.
And they did charge a small fee for food, but it was a kind of a sliding scale. So whatever you could afford, you could pay. And they started a program with the school system in New Orleans, and began to use it as a training program. So you could learn, you could learn how to be in the restaurant business at the same time that you were running this great uh, resource for the community. And it was just, there was such a good spirit about it. I get that sense when you all talk about all the partnerships and all the different people contributing, that there's a kind of a, kind of a contagious spirit that begins to build among people when you have so many different kinds of people bringing their gifts and making their contributions. It's like you begin to see, greater and greater possibilities. And it was this, I think it's really some of the chefs in New Orleans who got behind it and said, we'll pitch in and help create the jobs training piece. And it was just a wonderful spirit to have people with different gifts and different expertise all pitching in, from food supplies to cooking skills to business, like the business piece of. It's very exciting to see that kind of thing happening.
I just thought of something in conjunction with that it seems like in our orienting circle that the one of the things, or two of the things that people can be in solidarity about are, one, everyone deserves access to really healthy organic food. Boom. And the other, what was the other one? I had lost this a few minutes earlier, and then, so there's the access. Oh, and then that everybody is welcome at the table. So no matter where you are on your journey, or we're one of the programs that does serve people when they're inebriated, that everybody really is welcome at the table. And we also ask our volunteers to sit and eat, not at one table that's a volunteer table, but to go in as they're comfortable, in ones and twos or threes, and sit with people and converse. That's not going to work for everyone. And not every guest wants to do that either. But I think those are the things that most people can agree on, at least in terms of our volunteers and partners that come in.
So we have 3 different questions related to partners who are sourcing food for you. One about, maybe if you can talk about the Gandhi Mahal Interfaith Garden. One asking if you grow any of the food or partner with other growers in the area. And also if you get, another one about if you get participation from community gardens who may donate food, or private people. And then Peter Rude also saying hello and asking about turkeys, fish, and produce. Are they locally sourced folks who are partners?
Yeah, I'll just start with the locally sourced. Everything is locally sourced. Although we do get beans from the central coast of California. One of the churches there, a friend of mine, his church, they send us 40 pounds a month of beans grown. When I first tasted the beans, I was like, man, these are really good. Got to have them at our kitchen. So they've been sending them to one of our folks on our circle, and people comment about it. It's really interesting when they have something that's really tastes good. And then we get our walleye from Red Lake, which is the best. And sorry for any Canadians, but it's better than Canadian walleye, which most restaurants tend to source from. So if you're looking for good walleye, Red Lake Walleye is the place to go. And then we have a local guy who raises buffalo, Ed Eichten. He's been in the business for a long time, and his parents had started out, they're one of the first folks in Minnesota, apparently, who started making Gouda cheese. And then they had a dairy, then he went into raising buffalo. So he has some of the best, in my opinion. And so the other, with the Gandhi Mahal restaurant, you know, the owner of the Ruhal Israel, somebody who is really just community-minded individual. You know, he approached us to talk about doing work together. Actually, one of his general manager came to us too. He's also a Presbyterian pastor, and we just started, you know, using his space, and then we decided to, you know, utilize his chefing, his gift. He's probably one of the best Bangladesh chefs around. I think he's been on a couple shows with I can't remember the name of the Guy Fiero, his TV show. Anyway, so Ruhal has, in our fundraisers, he's prepared the buffalo tandoori style and the walleye, things like that, you know, with his traditional cooking. And it's just what I first coined it as, you know, where, you know, Native American Indian meets East Indian fusion type of thing. You know, so it's tasty stuff. So, you know, we started working with them different level, you know, what he wanted to start a garden and to work with us. So we did that. That's where that video comes out of. Now, one of the hard things, tough things, I think, for us is to find individuals who are willing to help out with the gardening and to maintain that. So, you know, one point they had an intern who was willing to do that. And Gandhi Mahal also got into various types of gardening, you know, with hydroponics and aquaponics, just that kind of gardening, and do it year round. And so he was doing most of his herbs that way. So, you know, learning things from him about what he was doing. Now, unfortunately, this year we're not doing the garden because of you know, when COVID hit, and then the demonstration and then subsequent riots. His restaurant burned to the ground, but he was real zen about it. You know, he was more about you know, let justice be done. You know, let her burn, and stood back. And you know, that's a man who you know, I learned a lot from just from being with him and working with him. You know, just see it through his eyes, see the world through his eyes. You know, justice work. It's been a really interesting relationship we've had. You know, and so hopefully he will rise up from the ashes and continue to do the work, and we'll do whatever we can to help him.
So to add to that, the Gandhi Mahal Interfaith Garden is in a place of hold right now. It's also in partnership, that garden, with the Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. And so one of the issues has been having a person and having consistency across the years of a person who runs that garden and then has volunteers coming in. And so that's a place of a little bit of challenge, right now. And I would say I'm hopeful that, well, we did do a planting last year, and we would have used some of the food from that, and as did the restaurant. And then this year there was not a planting. And so we'll just have to see. We've been blessed to have Eagle Scout many years ago build some raised beds on our grounds at First Nations Kitchen. And so we do a limited amount of growing on our small property. Bob is anti grass and lawns, so that's worked pretty well. And then we do partner with St. John the Evangelist in St. Paul, which has a farmer's market on the grounds of the church every Sunday. They have Hmong farmers who set up on the grounds. And what happens after people in the neighborhood and from the church do their shopping there, then St. John's purchases the remaining produce, and somebody from St. John's then drives it to All Saints and First Nations Kitchen, where we receive that, and we're able to integrate that into our Saturday veggie run that comes from Co-op Partners Warehouse, the warehouse that supplies all of the local co-ops in the Twin Cities and in Hudson, Wisconsin. And then one of the things that we hadn't touched on was just the full cycle. And so how we are really super keen on not wasting what we have. We're not at a place yet of doing like drying and canning like we would like to, but what we do, if there is any remaining produce and food on after Sunday nights sharing, then we deliver to the Minneapolis American Indian Center on Monday morning for their elders meal. They serve elders a meal there Monday through Friday. And so it's just a wonderful, it's just great start to finish. We're using some food that is destined for a dumpster or a compost heap somewhere. We are using food that our Hmong farmers are growing. They can't certify it organic. There's a lot of hoops to go through for that. But we are assured that it's, can you say natural? And so we have to say that in our information that we're primarily organic with our produce that we're giving out. Yeah, and then the distribution of it on the day after our meal. And looking at, as Bob had said, a second meal, I think we have to look more carefully with and do a little more networking with the actual systems to see what makes sense in terms of a second meal, and how do we use our volunteer power and maybe some of the food that we have in excess to put into a meal, and then what makes sense in terms of why should we have two churches in the area serving a meal on Tuesday night, or what makes sense.
Is there anything that we should know about how those of us who are farther afield here could support your ministry? It's very inspiring. It kind of makes you want to somehow pitch in and be supportive. I know you're raising up the community to really build this themselves, but if there's anything we could do, we'd love to hear.
Well, we're always looking for funding, of course. So if you want to make a donation, just go to firstnationskitchen.org, and that'll guide you through it. And we always do a couple fundraisers through the year. That if you just go online to our website, it'll tell you about, or on Facebook. when we have these fundraisers, it's always good support to for people to participate in. And then the other is just let people know about what we're doing, and that's another good way. And friend us on Facebook,
And Instagram.
And Twitter. Or if you just want to be real about it, come visit us.
Yeah, bring a camper and come. I personally, I love sharing, and I like to hear what other people are doing. I just love to hear about interesting and unique and creative things. And what is so exciting to me is a larger network of people in and out of the church, all ages, all backgrounds, working together. If anything has really restored and given me hope, in this time, it's that I really love to hear what people are doing, all over, and sharing ideas, not like coming in and saying, hey, you know what you could do better, but more like learning about the carpentry program that took over a church. I don't remember where it was, where all of a sudden they got all these people from the neighborhood coming in, and kids learning carpentry, adults learning carpentry, and instead of Sunday school. I mean, I love that innovation.
Yes. So do we. So do we.
Yeah.
And just want to add one other thing is that, if you have this sort of gift of cooking or chefing, that, we're open to you coming in and cooking a meal. It's a quick example. One of my good friends in DC is a chef, and he was wanting to come join us. So one day he flew in on a Sunday morning and started cooking that afternoon, and then he flew out the next day. It was just kind of a really cool thing for him to be part of, and have him be part of the work we do. And so it's not that hard. It's not that difficult. If I could do it, most people can do it.
Where I'm from, we like to deep fry our turkey.
That's where I'm from too. All right, they have to stick to the standards though.
Well, thank you both so much. It's been wonderful talking with you and hearing more about the ministries and creativity and the partnerships that you bring to this work. And part of our goal as SIM and doing these webinars is to start to form a community of practice of people within the Episcopal Church and beyond who are looking at food justice issues and the intersection with other justice issues, so that we can learn from each other, share what we're learning, and start building, our own piece of the movement together. So it's been really inspiring and exciting to hear how you're doing that in Minneapolis. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Brian Sellers-Peterson, who has been curating our amazing speakers during this season, is going to tell us a little bit about our next webinar on July 7th.
Yeah, pleased to let everyone know that Darrell Harris, who is one of the founders of the Black Church Food Security Network in Baltimore, is going to be joining us. And he's also works on issues around food security and food and faith at Johns Hopkins University, where he's finishing up a PhD. And so just, again, continuing on the conversation about food security in our communities. And so the best way to kind of stay dialed in on all of this will be with the SIM Facebook page. Make sure you go and like that so you can get announcements, but also a Facebook group, Agrarian Ministries Episcopal Church, will be having announcements, and a lot of things that were mentioned, videos, etc., will be posted there. So that's really a good place. And so many of you, you know, I recognize a lot of names. I know you're doing super innovative things, and I'm hoping you will post on that Facebook group some of the things that you're doing, so we can, in between our bi-monthly sessions, we'll continue the dialogue.
And we're also discussing, and we invite you next time, we're going to be doing this in a meeting format so that we'll all be able to see and hear each other. And we're continuing talking and would appreciate hearing from any of you of how best to facilitate people getting to know each other and sharing ideas for ministry on the Zoom meetings. So it's wonderful to be together. Thank you all for being here, and thanks especially to Ritchie and Robert Tubles for really a wonderful time together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and blessings on your ministry.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.